Now, spawning on Habitation Station in the top left-hand position, representing Mouse Sports, it's the blue Protoss, HasuObs. And his opponent, in the top right, the red Protoss player representing CSC, Adonminus. Habitation Station, Penguin, what are you expecting?
It's very hard to predict the way a PvP will go either way, like even without Adonminus. With Adonminus, I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna let him do his thing. I'm not gonna even pretend to predict anything. But HasuObs is somebody who, he is pretty good at playing a very, very defensive style. He's very good at the macro game, very good at the late game. But he's also the guy, one of the reasons that he is so strong is that even though he is known for his late game play, known for his macro-based play, he's also a guy who will throw in some very well executed all-ins there, here and there, and just be able to take maps that way as well. So HasuObs, always a formidable foe in that respect. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can show us in this series as well. And
well, it's quite interesting to see already both players, or at least HasuObs, being very cautious. He's checking for proxy gates immediately, both in-base, everywhere around is natural, and this is a really smart move to make because it's a 2-spawn position map. It's relatively easy to get caught out by something like a proxy 2 gate, and in a best of 5, in such a tense situation, you don't want something bad like that happening and be one game down. What do you suspect is going to be Adonminus' big play, though? Because there's so many things that can work well on Habitation Station, taking into account the fact that there's the close-by air rush distances, quite a bit of dead space, the gold bases and things like that. Do you reckon we're going to be seeing aggressive openings or more macro-orientated from both of these two?
You mentioned the close-by air rush distance, and as a result, I think this map in particular, I would not be surprised to see one of the two players going for a Stargate. Interesting thing to note, you asked about Adonminus, but actually just to talk about HasuObs a little bit, his cybernetics core is significantly farther along. It's about 20 seconds ahead of his opponent, so he may well be able to get a little bit of aggression off before Adonminus is able to get his own warp gate up. Of course, a 20-second window, not the most gigantic of windows, but it's still something, and it is going to allow HasuObs to get out his mothership core a little bit earlier.
The other thing as well is Adonminus has been mining a bit more gas than HasuObs for a while, but as you said, due to that later cybernetics core, the mothership core out a lot sooner for HasuObs. He's also chrono boosting out a Stalker, so going to be looking to apply a bit of pressure, just going to try and poke and prod, see if he can get any nice easy wins there. Meanwhile, over on Adonminus' side, the second gateway coming through, and this is currently one of my favorite PvP openers, getting that second gate up, because while it doesn't give you a massive tech advantage, it does keep you safe from pretty much anything that your opponent can be throwing at you.
And another big thing about this as well is that he did probe scout, he scouted what HasuObs is doing, he saw the earlier cyber core, and also threw down that second gateway potentially as a response to that. So really nice reading of the game here from Adonminus so far. His second gateway is about to finish on up, and he will have the units to hold this probably. I mean, there's not a huge amount of pressure coming out just yet. We do have one Stalker and one Zealot at the front, another one coming on in from behind. But we have a hidden probe here from HasuObs, which could be looking to get a bit of shenaniganry done in the bottom left if he decides to hide some tech. He may just be scouting for hidden tech himself, as Adonminus does have a history of doing that, but in come the units.
And straight away some damage is now coming down. We can see that the mothership core taking quite a bit of fire already from HasuObs, and with that, it's definitely not what you want to be seeing. And of course, keeping that up for Adonminus is pretty much the most important thing, but Stalkers for HasuObs getting pushed back now. Adonminus looking to be in a good spot.
Adonminus is in a pretty good spot, but another very important thing to note as well is that HasuObs killed off 2 workers and his mothership core survived. He didn't lose anything super expensive. It looks like he actually lost a Stalker and a Zealot, so not the most amazing of trades, but not a bad trade either. He did survive at the most costly of his units here. The problem is that his mothership core is very out of position now, and it's going to take a while for him to get on home. Meanwhile, he is adding on a Twilight Council behind this, so it looks like he may be going into Blink, but I would assume Dark Templar, because Blink, it's not really all that strong on Habitation Station.
There's also this hidden pylon down in the bottom right, Penguin, so nice little warp in location for DTs, should that be able to play, but it is going to be Blink, regardless. Meanwhile, Phoenix coming out from Adonminus, and I really like Phoenix in PvP. I think being able to pressure that mothership core, being able to come in and harass, so powerful, but ooh, bit of a misstep here. Adonminus loses his mothership core, not ideal.
Not at all, and that is actually pretty big here. Adonminus, though, he is adding on his own Twilight Council. He's got the Stargate up, as well as a couple of Phoenixes already, so he does have the air dominance here, as there's really nothing in the air for HasuObs, except for that one Mothership core that's still trying to make its very, very slow way back home. He has managed to get it down to the bottom right now, or bottom left now. Meanwhile, HasuObs going to be going for an expand, and I like this play because he knows that he's going to be pretty much safe, especially after seeing that the tech choice of Adonminus for now is going to be those Phoenixes. So he knows that Phoenixes are not going to be a gigantic threat while he has Blink Stalkers on the field. And of course, with the lack of a Mothership core as well, there's not going to be any sort of Time Warps offensively or anything like that. So HasuObs is in a good spot to just take his expansion and be pretty okay. My question is, what is this Twilight Council going to be for?
It's going to be for Blink Penguin. So nice little upgrade. Mimicking coming down here, but Adonminus, he's so far behind in that blink timing. It's already 125 seconds through for HasuObs. HasuObs' natural base too is now getting very far ahead, but the issue for Adonminus is because he's gone for those Phoenix as his tech choice, a head-on engagement would always favour HasuObs, and therefore he can't feel confident taking his natural base when there's Blink Stalkers down. This is giving the blue Protoss player a good little advantage coming in to this kind of mid-game in terms of his economy and also in his tech. Adonminus needs to get some harassment down with these Phoenix to level that out.
The big problem here is that I think Adonminus was thinking with the Phoenixes, he wanted to try to fake out HasuObs a little bit, make HasuObs feel like there wasn't a blink all in. Ooh, we actually have one of the Phoenixes maybe getting taken down? Nope. But as I was saying, I feel like he wanted to mind game HasuObs into not expecting this 4-game blink all in. But the problem is it was scouted very early on, and now there's an Immortal that's going to be out. There's going to be a Nexus Cannon on the natural. There's going to be two Nexus Cannons potentially if he decides to try to go into the main as well. So really, HasuObs is perfectly prepared for this, and Adonminus is pretty much just going for a 4-game blink all in that's hitting very, very late here.
Blink is already down for HasuObs as well. Stalker count slightly in Adonminus' favour. Adonminus' though proxy pylon only just now finished. Those gateways are going to have to be warping consistently. Chrono boost being spent on Blink because it is still not done. And this gives so much time, especially with that Immortal out. No second Immortal started, though, from HasuObs. So he's only got the single Immortal, but with Blink and Photon Overcharge, which has been triggered very early due to the Observer seeing everything. We're looking to be in a very defensive position. Time Warp goes down, but with Blink, that gives plenty of time. Offensive forward, Blink there. A couple of Stalkers get caught. Nice force fields
there coming out. And yeah, I mean, Adonminus gets absolutely shredded on the front lines there, losing 4 or 5 Stalkers for free.
And that really is reflected in the resources locked. Take a look at that right now, Penguin. 1,300 to 450 in favor of HasuObs. That's a pretty big loss, especially when we factor in that HasuObs is 5 probes up and a base up.
Yeah, at this point, Adonminus is hanging on for dear life here. Honestly, I don't even know how he can win this. This isn't like one of those maps where he can blink into the main and force field HasuObs out and kill off the main or something. There's really not that much he can do here, and HasuObs is feeling confident enough to push out of his base. He's got a 20 supply lead here. Good lifts coming on the Immortals, though. Nice plays here from Adonminus, but they will be forced to drop again. Although, really good focus fire from Adonminus, but I just don't think it's going to be enough, Mattles. The supplies really tell the story here.
70 to 42 in HasuObs' favor. He's chasing down the rest of these Stalkers. Goes for a little blink, tries to pick up another 1 or 2, loses 1 in the process, but the sheer numbers now hugely in favor of the Mouse player. Adonminus, he GG's out, and Mouse HasuObs is spawning up in the top position of Polar Knight as the blue Protoss player. Currently 1-0 up in this best of 5 on his way to WCS EU Premier. None other than HasuObs. And his opponent to the south, the red Protoss player. Wanting to level out this series, wanting to get that 1-1 to keep his hopes alive. Adonminus.
Now, I have a bit of an interesting stat for HasuObs. HasuObs is the player who is coming up for the qualifiers. He's not the one who is from the existing seasons of WCS last year, which obviously is going to be Adonminus. Interestingly enough, though, I actually expected that it was the other way around, because HasuObs has been present in every single season of WCS Premier thus far. He didn't do particularly well in Seasons 1 and 3. He got knocked out in round number 1 in the round of 32. But Season 2, he really was able to shine, got that 7th to 8th place finish, and he wants to probably try to duplicate that in the first season this year, and he's taken a good first step to making it back up to Premier with that 1-0 lead.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Penguin, if HasuObs were to win this as the person who came in through the qualifiers, he would be one of the few people so far in this season to have actually beaten the last season's Premier player.
Yeah, in fact, the current stats show it's 10-2 in favor of the existing WCS player. The only 2 qualifying players who were able to take out their counterparts were Lil Bao winning 2-3 over Teffel and Bly winning 2-3 over Daisy. Otherwise, all of the winners thus far have been from the existing season of WCS.
Which really says a lot about the quality of players, their continued improvement and development, because there's no shadow of a doubt that the people coming up in the qualifiers are very, very good players. As you said yourself, Penguin, most people would assume HasuObs was last season up in Premier. Or he's around so much, he's such a well-known player in Europe and across the world, that it really seems the more likely option. This game, though, things are taking a pretty similar tack. Adonminus, though, taking a bit more of a risk. Getting down that Stargate really early, as opposed to the second gateway. That means that he's going to be able to pump out things like Oracle's Phoenix and start putting on a bit of pressure. Meanwhile, HasuObs, he's just getting down gateway, warp gate tech, his mothership core, and playing things relatively standard, although some tech should be on its way out shortly.
Yeah, now, we do have, once again, as I think you mentioned, we do have the Stargate coming out from Adonminus once again, so he could go for something similar. Meanwhile, we actually have HasuObs going for the same tech path as well, with the Twilight Council coming up behind his mineral line. So, a fairly interesting opening to this game, as both of these guys look pretty comfortable with their tech choices from the last game. Adonminus, I am still expecting to see something different overall than last game. I don't expect him to go into a 1-base 4-game blink all-in at around the 10-minute mark, because it just didn't work at all last game. It's not like it was close, it just didn't work. So, I'm really interested to see how he's going to change it up this game. He does have a Phoenix coming out, so he's not going Oracle. And, yeah, I mean, this is thus far looking pretty similar from him.
And having something similar doesn't really matter that much, but ooh, HasuObs is going to be mixing things up, getting the Dark Shrine down. Now, the reason this is really significant is because of the fact that Adonminus has got Phoenix, as opposed to an Oracle. Yes, this means he should be able to scout it, but if he doesn't, he's not going to have any detection.
He hasn't seen it just yet. He doesn't manage to get through to the back there. Seeing a couple of Stalkers will be a little bit of a tell that it may well be Twilight Council, but it could still be a Blink all-in, and it could still be Blink in general. And with a Robo coming up behind this, Adonminus should be ready to deal with DTs, and he will see it now. So he's going to be pretty okay against the DTs with this Robo that's already been started. Big question for me is going to be how many DTs does HasuObs warp in? I would assume it's only going to be one.
Well, he's got a proxy pylon down. It would be very strange if he got more than a single DT down, and the reason for that is due to how much detection is going to be available. Although, interestingly, Adonminus, he cancels his robotics facility due to getting down an Oracle.
Okay, that's kind of cool. He does have the detection through the Oracle, for those who aren't aware of that, and he is going to be expanding, so his own expansion timing is relatively similar to that of his opponents here, and I guess he just didn't feel the need for a Robo. The Robo would have been very nice if there was a Blink all incoming. He could have cranked out a couple of Immortals there. And, well, it is just going to be the single DT coming on in for now. And, actually,
it's sneak past.
He's going to sneak on past.
This could get a decent amount of damage done. The Oracle is now on its way back in, but it's quite a way back, so this DT getting already 3-4 more kills than it probably ever should have done. And this is something that is going to make HasuObs very happy. Getting 4 kills with a single DT, a good trade.
Wow.
I think that's definitely a very good trade. So
yeah, I mean, great plays from him, and HasuObs is going to be very happy with that. He's also got the earlier expansion timing, so I think HasuObs has cemented himself into a pretty solid lead here. It's not game ending or anything like that, but he definitely does have a pretty comfortable game ahead of him unless he makes a mistake.
Now HasuObs is following up from this DT play, going into Blink, just as we saw him do in game number 1, realizing he's probably got some very good Stalker Blink micro skills, and going to try and utilize some of that. And with the 2-base economy, he can produce a good amount. Now, the Phoenix, I'm not sure if they actually managed to catch the fact that Blink was being researched. There was no chrono boost, so it depends how closely how attentive Adonminus was to those Phoenix.
Now, with double photon overcharge here, Adonminus shouldn't be able to do any damage. A cool little play he could go for
has got another DT in.
Oh, wow.
2 kills there, which isn't much, but that's, again, 2 more than you should ever seen. Oh, the Oracle triggers Revelation, but the DT's already backing out.
Yeah, and, well, the DT is just going to chill on out that at the Watchtower right now. And HasuObs getting some really good damage done here, and keeping that DT alive means that he could definitely go in and try to get 1 or 2 more kills later if Adonminus is not attentive. And Adonminus really has taken a lot more damage from those DTs than he ever should have, and now with the Forge on the way up for HasuObs, he's going to take another advantage as he starts the upgrades earlier.
And it's worth noting as well that this damage has been very substantial. 8 workers killed, and actually HasuObs sitting quite comfortably, 7 workers up at the moment, as well as with that slightly earlier natural base that's been mining for longer, gives him a really solid economy in terms of income. HasuObs mining about 200-300 more minerals per minute, and also about 100 more gas a minute at the moment.
And yeah, I mean, that's going to be a really big factor going into the mid game here, as HasuObs he only has a very minor supply lead at about 10. It's going to go down a little bit as a, actually a nice sentry pick off here from Adonminus, as he does finally get a little bit of damage done himself. But here comes HasuObs at the front. This is not really an all-in. This is him just trying to pick away at his opponent, gets a stalker, kills, triggers an overcharge, and gets on out. So HasuObs, he is continuing to look pretty solid himself, but these three Phoenixes are doing a really good job here for Adonminus, picking off a Stalker as well, forcing an overcharge of their own. And actually, Adonminus doing some pretty nice work there with those Phoenixes. He's actually killed off more resources than HasuObs has at this point.
HasuObs blinking up into the main base of Adonminus, just going to try and get a bit more damage done. Was aiming for that robotics facility, but won't be able to get it since 2 Photon Overcharge have been used so far. Quite a few Stalkers going down here. That's something that the HasuObs really should try to avoid. Overall now, losing a lot more resources than that of his opponent.
Yeah, I mean, HasuObs now is no longer in the supply lead as well. Although, the overcharge has now dissipated on the natural. A couple of workers will be picked off. He's got to be careful not to overextend, and he does blink on out there. A couple of good worker kills there for HasuObs. He's up to 14 kills now. And he's actually up to a 13 worker lead, which does mean that Adonminus has a very significant army supply lead. But with good micro on these Blink Stalkers, he can keep his opponent at home for quite a while. And a nice pickoff on the Mothership Core for free. That's going to be very, very nice for HasuObs. And the revelation on these Stalkers should be dissipating in just a short little while here. And after that, HasuObs is going to be free to move around a little bit less observed by his opponent, so to speak.
HasuObs looking to try and pick off those Immortals if he can, because they're going to be the real big damage dealers to his Blink Stalkers, and if he can keep that number low, he'll get himself into a good spot. But as you said, this worker lead that has been consistent throughout this game so far just means HasuObs has got the economy to really pump out a lot of stuff. But big plays coming down now from Adonminus. 5 additional gateways being added on, as well as the Templar Archives.
4 Stalkers being blinked into the main while the rest go towards the front. The Zealots tanking the shots as the Stalkers try to pick off an Immortal unsuccessfully. And we actually have a couple of the Phoenixes coming on back to lift up these Stalkers and ward them off. Very, very nicely played here by Adonminus. These Phoenixes have been worth their weight in gold. The first one does finally go down, and now Adonminus is actually going to be able to pick off the rest of those Stalkers that did blink into the main. So HasuObs, not at the better end of that trade, but he still does have a nice little position here where he's even in supply, and he is up by 12 workers. The big problem is, as you pointed out, 5 gateways coming on down for Adonminus, and, well, that's going to mean a lot of pressure coming out of him. This is going to be an all-in push from Adonminus, most likely. And there's a 3rd base going down for HasuObs. He has no idea. He
has no idea this is coming, but more importantly, that 3rd base, as you mentioned, is such a big vulnerability. It's a tie-up, it's an investment of resources that long-term certainly will give him a massive lead. But with this push most likely coming in the near future, or actually maybe not, the 3rd base now being taken by Adonminus.
Okay.
But still, this is, I'm just taking a look at the gateway count. There's 8 gates up against what's going to be 7 for HasuObs. But the big difference is HasuObs has started Colossus production, whereas over on Adonminus' side, he hasn't. He's gone for Templar Archives instead.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of interesting. I like Colossus more on this map, actually, a little bit. Or, yeah, because it's easy to defend your natural there with Colossi, and it's pretty decent to defend your 3rd as well. The big advantage that the Archons are going to have is when HasuObs moves out into the middle of the map here. It's a lot of a more wide open area here. The Colossi don't do quite as much damage, and that's going to be really where Adonminus wants to take his fights. And now, a big push coming into the 3rd. There's a lot of Immortals in that army, but we do have Zealots and a DT going to deny this base at the 3rd of Adonminus as well.
And that's a nice little pickup. Adonminus warping in a lot of Zealots, but of course with the Dark Templar there, they're next to useless against it with no detection. So not a good trade there at all for Adonminus, as he just starts losing all of these Zealots. A lot of minerals down the drain. And for the moment, HasuObs, he's managed to defend his 3rd. It's up and running. It's finished. His opponent doesn't even have one in construction for the moment. And Adonminus having to go out for some more crazy plays, getting down a fleet beacon and a 2nd Stargate.
Yeah, he's definitely going to need the Tempests to deal with the Colossus count as it continues to go on up. But HasuObs has to be careful not to overextend here. There's a lot of Immortals that with some good focus fire could take down that Colossus. Now double Tempest production has begun, and this is actually going to get out of hand very quickly, as HasuObs doesn't exactly have a gigantic Colossus count to fall back on. So basically, it's not like he's going to have 6 Colossi that tank some of the shots of the Tempests, do some damage before they die. The Tempests are going to shred the Colossus count pretty much right at the beginning of the engagement here.
Now, those Colossi, there isn't actually that many of them down on the field at the moment, and if we keep a look at them, yes, the Tempest will start taking them out, but if there isn't too much of a commitment to them, then actually that's not the biggest problem in the world. However, look at upgrades, Penguin. +3 attack is about 2/3 down for HasuObs, whereas Adonminus is only about 2/3 through +2. That's a big ground upgrade lead for the mouse player.
Yeah, HasuObs has an entire upgrade advantage here. There's no real window that Adonminus can hit even upgrade. So HasuObs has cemented himself in a pretty good position. I still think he has a pretty sizable lead. It's not like I said this at the beginning of the game as well. It's not game-ending by any means because PvP can be decided in a split second with a better engagement, but HasuObs has the third base up and running. The third base for Adonminus only about 1/3 of the way down. As you mentioned, the upgrade advantage is there as well. The big question is going to be, does HasuObs identify this Tempest switch fast enough to do something about it? And he is getting double Colossus production, so if he overcommits to the
Penguin,
Colossi...
a DT and a Zealot once again going into that third base of Adonminus. An Oracle coming over, but this harassment is pretty much relentless.
Yeah, this shouldn't really do anything this time around. The army is close by. But as I was saying, if HasuObs overcommits to Colossi, this is going to be a huge issue for him if he doesn't identify that there are Tempests on the way. He does have a Templar Archives on the way, so he can switch into Archons instead of Colossi. But for now, he is going to try to push the third.
And if this third gets taken out, that could be a huge problem for Adonminus. The DT adding a lot of DPS in there. HasuObs does manage to take it down, supply blocking Adonminus too, but it's the Colossi at the back without the Tempest in range that are dealing so much damage. Adonminus being forced to retreat from this engagement. He cannot come out on top here, so HasuObs hitting the economy, hitting the army supply, and is looking in very good shape. 3 Tempests are down on the field. They're slowly making their way across, but are they going to be there in time?
No, Adonminus wanted to hide the Tempests for as long as possible, and HasuObs did a very nice timing with those Tempests still in the main, taking out the third, taking out the entirety of the ground army almost here, and even the Immortal count is even at this point, so looks like this is about to be game. The Colossi will fall, but the rest of the army units are still alive, and the Tempests are not going to trade well against these Stalkers. Double the supply for HasuObs as he pushes his way towards a 2-0 lead in this series.
The final Tempest does go down, the final Warpins from Adonminus. He doesn't want to be 2-0 down in a best of 5. So much pressure if that happens, but he has to GG out. HasuObs now sitting 2-0 up in this best of 5 and is steadily on his way up into Premier. That was an awesome game, Penguin.
It really was, and I mean, Adonminus just looked one step behind that entire game. Same with game number 1. He has what it takes to take out HasuObs, but today is just not his day so far. He's going to have to win 3 in a row to advance to Premier.
And that is just such an uphill battle. It's not something that cannot be achieved. Let's be honest with that. I've seen many games where people have come back on
even
match
saw
point.
Bly do it.
Yeah, it's
in these very qualifiers.
Exactly. It can easily be done, and well, not easily, but it can be done. What Adonminus needs to do is kind of step up his level of play, and I know that seems somewhat harsh, but it's also one of the most challenging things for a player to do, because HasuObs hasn't won these first 2 games through doing something spectacular, in my opinion. It's not like we could load up the replay, bring it up on screen and say, there, that moment, that was when HasuObs made the game-breaking decision that meant that he went on to win. So what does Adonminus do? He has to just step up everywhere and come up with something that will get him ahead, because at no point has he really taken a solid advantage.
We are going to be on Daedalus Point, which is definitely not a conventional map, so maybe
although it's going to become
Adonminus
one.
Yeah.
Okay, if the test patch goes through.
I mean, it's still going to be good for Zerg. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Blizzard has announced that they will be narrowing the choke at the natural, which is kind of necessary. But it is still going to be a Zerg favored map because the third base is just so absolutely wide open. Personally, I don't mind the ramp and I don't mind the open third. I just feel like they have to pick one, and they're choosing to have the open third. So anyway, until then, we're going to be on the current version of Daedalus Point and PvP. This could be interesting. We don't really see very many games on this map because one player tends to veto it.
So it's interesting that neither of these players have opted to veto it out as of yet. We are in the lobby just waiting for all the various different language streams to come up. And of course, this gives us a good moment to remind all you the viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. All of this has been made possible by ESL UK, so go and check them out on Twitter, ESL_UK. And if you're enjoying the casting, I would be like forever loving if you'd check out myself and Penguin, which is of course at Maddles91 and at MYI Penguin. Now, we should be getting ready to go into the next game shortly, but just waiting for any other players. They're ready, and yeah, it seems that everyone is prepared, so we should be loading in soon. Penguin, let people know, what else have we got planned for this evening?
Well, for those of you who have been watching WCS NA, we have a bit of a different format here, where instead of 6 best-of-5s, we only have 4, which I personally like, because 6 best-of-5s is kind of crazy for casters. But, so we're going to be starting things off with this series, as we are already 2 games into Adonminus versus HasuObs. Next up is going to be Live Zerg versus Harstem for a ZVP. Following that, we're going to be having a TVZ between Daishi and Hope. And then we're going to be finishing it up with a TVP between Bunny and Verdi. So we're not repeating any matchups today. It's going to be a nice little, it's going to be a day of different matchups.
And
versatility.
That's always good. A big, good amount of diversity coming down in the day.
Diversity, that's the word.
Diversity, versatility. Yes, no. Good diversity coming down in the matchups means there's going to be something for everyone. Everyone, of course, is going to be playing for a place in Premier. But we need to go to a short break just while we reset up this lobby. There's a bit of a problem there, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
Challenger day number 4. We are 2 games into our first series of the night. It's a lovely PvP between Mouse Sports HasuObs and Cascades Adonminus. It is currently 2-0 for HasuObs. I am Penguin. With me is Maddles, and we're going to be jumping into game 3. How are you today, Maddles?
I'm doing good. I think things so far though really aren't going how we thought it was gonna be, because let's face it, it's 2-0 up for one of these two players, and it's not really what either of us were expecting in what we were thinking could have been our closest get a day so far yet.
The day is still long. This series could still have 3 games, so we don't know quite yet if it is going to be as one-sided as it looks right now. But you're right. A 2-0 for HasuObs, where both games, while they weren't stomps, they were pretty convincing wins for him either way. I mean, Adonminus always looked about one step behind, and he is playing safe to start things off. He's going for a probe scout on 10, so he really wants to make sure he's not being caught. Whoa. Gas steal, Maddles!
I haven't seen one of these in a long time, Penguin.
Okay, very smart play from HasuObs. Grabs the second gas to make sure Adonminus can't double gas steal. This is really interesting, though. This is something I haven't seen since Wings of Liberty, since early Wings of Liberty in a competitive game.
No, it's quite clever, though. And for those of you who don't know, the main benefit of stealing a gas is the fact that you then limit your opponent's options. There's no way that HasuObs or Adonminus can really get out-teched now by HasuObs. HasuObs is limited to just this one gas, 3 probes in it, so he can't go for a super quick tech rush. That leaves Adonminus open to do really whatever he feels like, while limiting his opponent's options.
Well, basically the biggest thing as well is that when you're playing PvP and you decide to gas steal, what you're saying is that you usually want to force your opponent to 4-gate, because that's really the best build you can kind of do off 1 gas.
Oh, it's going to be a proxy Stargate.
It is going to be a proxy Stargate, and that's a really cool follow-up here from Adonminus, because HasuObs is not going to be 4-gating, and he is just going to be chronoing out that first Zealot. He's getting a second Zealot as well, because they do have higher DPS than Stalkers, so he's going to be trying to knock down that gas as quickly as possible. And now, Adonminus' proxy Stargate, he's forced out 2 Zealots, Maddles. There's no Stalkers on the map yet.
But there's a second gateway just getting produced now from HasuObs. Possibly suspecting something. Oh, he's built a pylon in his opponent's main. This is getting to be a very funky game 3. Could go either way. It all depends on how much damage this Stargate is able to deal. And really, the proxy pylon, if it gets scouted, will get shut down. But if it doesn't, that could be bad times.
It looks to me like HasuObs wanted to go for a 4-gate anyway, as he saved up a ton of Chrono Boost energy. But with the scout coming on in for Adonminus, he does spend that Chrono energy on a Mothership core that's coming on out. Now, here we go. The Oracle will be under construction right away now. Void Ray?
Okay, so this
is so cool.
It's a bit more of an unusual strategy. And this is one of the things that we said at the start of this series, Penguin, is that Adonminus does have more unusual styles. And this is straight away the sort of thing we're seeing, that a proxy Stargate, 9 times out of 10, will result in an Oracle being produced to the damage. So the Void Ray is just a bit more cool.
I really like what HasuObs has as a position, though. He's got
what?
3
Probes?
gateways.
Probes?
What?
Probes?
I'm so confused!
This is brilliant.
This is awesome!
So, with the probes getting pulled, this actually means that any counter-aggression that comes in from this pylon won't do much, and it kind of becomes a bit of a strange base race. But
oh, he's not gonna get the overcharge off. The Void Ray charges up, targets down the Mothership core. Time Warp is used. That's a completely useless Time Warp here. And now the Stalker trying to whittle away at one of the Stalkers here of HasuObs. The probes are gonna come in. They're gonna try to deal with the Stalkers as the second Void Ray is about to finish up. Is this gonna do the damage it needs to do? The first Void Ray still alive. Charge has been used. He is going to be able to still do quite a bit of damage, though, to those armored units. Focus fire going down, but 2 of the Stalkers are killed off immediately, and the Void Ray survives!
3 Stalkers warping in just north of the nexus of HasuObs, but the damage Void Ray being kept back. 1 lone Stalker going to go and chase it down, will get the kill. Probe on probe fighting is occurring, and this is a very funky game. Adonminus down massively in supply due to losing all of these.
Void Ray.
He has the Void Ray, but another wave of Stalker warp-ins will kill that, and he's up by like 10 times the probe count.
Yeah. Alright, the Void Ray is not going to be able to deal with these Stalkers, as you pointed out. It's almost dead. There is no prismatic alignment. And that's going to be game, but that was a really cool build from Adonminus.
It was so close as well. I think the critical moment was when HasuObs moved a Stalker further out, but GG's called, and HasuObs takes this first